how does one live with things that happen to you? How do you get over things? And you're probably thinking, Cheryl, oh, it's kind of like what you're supposed to be telling us. You're supposed to be giving us tips. And as cliche as it is, let's all say it together. We are here to unveil ourselves. So let's do just that. I get it. I probably sound like such a broken record. I've been regurgitating this for the longest time. But this year really has been giving lessons on the 100. And damn, guys, at times I'm like, can I just catch a break? And then there are wow moments. There are these good things that are happening, and there are these really lows. So it's almost like this roller coaster where you're constantly feeling emotions. You're constantly having this butterfly effect in your stomach, and it's with both good and bad things. And I'm just not sure if it's been more heightened because I'm a lot more conscious of the things that are happening around me, or it's just been something that you kind of deal with and you just never take the time to pause and actually sit with it. And I think now that we're heading into the 7th month of the year, I'm like, wait, guys, it's only been 6 months, and I'm thinking to myself, like, there's been so many things that have been happening, so many things that have impacted my life, that has changed the way things happening, has changed the way that I see things, changed just everything holistically. And I'm sitting and I'm like, how are we doing this? How are we dealing with it? Am I dealing with it? And I'm like, it's become such a prominent thing in my life to be more conscious of the things to it's become such a prominent thing in my life to be conscious of the things that are happening in and around me and the way that I handle it. Okay, quick detour before we get into the rest of the video. And this is not at all just, for me to regain my thoughts. But there are so many things that are coming. There are so many exciting things that are happening. And one of them is I'm going to launch Have Coffee With Me. And if you guys know, I love me a good cup of coffee. And a pep talk. So why not combine one of the two things that I enjoy doing? So don't forget to go follow me on Instagram, because that's where I'd be uploading the majority of it. So go do that. And then don't forget to like and share and subscribe and, all of those other lovely things that sometimes I forget to tell you guys to do. But if you haven't already, please do. And then for part 2, that I'm actually more excited about, is in the month of August we are going to be doing something big and exciting. And without sharing too much, stay tuned. And I'm so excited for that. Back to how do we get over things. And every week when I think of recording a video, or when it's prep week, I kind of go through the motions of like, okay, so what are we gonna talk about this week? What are we gonna share? And there are times where I just don't know what to say. And then there are other times where I'm like, there's too much I want to say, and I don't know if now is the right time to share. And then I've been thinking about the fact that this is this recurring thing that happens. It's as much as my channel is in aims of helping other people go through or deal with certain things that I have been going through, it really is for me and ways that I can unveil myself. And I think one of the biggest things that has been put in the forefront this year is just how I deal with things or how I don't deal with things. And I think that this is something that I think a lot of us struggle with. I think it's something that a lot of us probably have a tough time doing. I know for one that this is something that I've been battling with for a while, right? And so it's then important for me to at least acknowledge the fact that this is something that's happening, and how can I use this as a way, one, to learn and to share with other people if this is something that they are going through as well. So let's be honest, life inevitably is going to present us with tough situations. That's going to be emotionally and psychologically taxing. I don't know about you, but there are so many times where we fall into the trap of why certain things are always happening to us, why things are always a struggle, why things are so difficult, and trying to figure out the lesson in the things that are happening. And on the one side of the coin, sometimes there just isn't, and it's a tough thing to come to terms with. And then there are other things that the other side of the coin is that having these challenges are going to help us develop and to grow. And it's not always the best. It's not always fun, but it's important for us to understand that certain things happen, and it's not always as a result of you are not on God's favorite list this year, or you're meant to just go through struggle. Sometimes it's one for the things that we pray about, and two, just to learn something out of it. And I think one of the biggest things that I've kind of been trying to ask myself and to ask God is, what's the lesson in this? What am I supposed to learn? And I think this has been very big on just changing my perspective with the way that I immediately would react to certain things. And I think it was just a way of kind of reflecting and to sit with your thoughts and to just try to understand why it is that something is happening before you just go to reacting. So the first step would be in overcoming difficult circumstances is to acknowledge the situation and to recognize the emotions that come with it. And this is a difficult thing because, our emotions sometimes get the best of us. Whether you're sad, angry, happy, frustrated, it's important to validate these feelings. And this creates a great foundation for processing the experience rather than just suppressing them. So, what I mean by validating your feelings is acknowledging that whatever it is that happened made you feel some type of way. Whatever the situation is, it made you feel sad, it made you frustrated, it made you angry, and that's okay. I think the problem comes in with wallowing in those feelings, living in those feelings. And so that's the difference between learning to validate your feelings versus living in them, right? And then the other thing that we tend to do is life is so fast paced, we're constantly on the go, we're just constantly moving. And if you don't, life's gonna happen in any case. So it's just so much easier to suppress those feelings and to move on because I don't have time to cry today. I need to do A, B, C, and D. And eventually it just becomes a lot. It becomes heavy. And it always ends up being more problematic than just dealing with those emotions. Step 2 is the acknowledgement. And so when we're doing this self-reflection, this allows you to at least analyze the factors that are contributing to whatever it is that you're going through. What are the patterns? What is it that you did? What is it that the other person did? Or the situation, like how was it created? I think sometimes we like to say things like, it doesn't make sense. I don't know how this happened. And without putting too much blame on ourselves, I think that if we're being honest with ourselves, there are times where we need to take accountability for certain things or acknowledging why certain things have happened. And then the other side as well is learning that some things happen that are beyond our control. There are things that happen in our lives that just doesn't make sense. And you're like, well, sure, that's kind of contradictory to what you just said. And you're right. And the reason why I feel like it's important to put both on the front line is to explain that life isn't this clear cut thing. It's not a one size fits all. And it's important for us to then understand, one, acknowledging the fact that there are certain things that happen in our lives that is not the most pleasant. It's not always fun. But that does not have to now become your character. It does not have to be who you are. And labeling your life with just every struggle that you go through. And I think doing this, one, you also start to become so immune to life that's happening to you. And you're like, okay, well, this is just another day in the life of Cheryl. I know that that's something that I've been doing for the longest time. And it's such an unhealthy coping mechanism because you start feeding into those emotions. You start feeding into those beliefs that things first need to be tough before they get better. Things first have to go through this downhill before we can see the mountain. And eventually it just becomes this pessimistic way of viewing life. And I don't know about you, but I just don't want to do it anymore. The third step, at least, is taking the accountable steps to finding a solution. And this can involve setting realistic goals for yourself, seeking for external support, getting words of encouragement for other people, or at least talking about it. And I think that has been my biggest issue or flaw with how I deal with certain things. And I think sometimes the way that we look at ourselves and the way that we carry ourselves plays a big role in that. I, for one, have always prided myself on the fact that I was strong and resilient and I could deal with every situation, setback that life has given me. And I think a lot of other people have viewed me that way as well. And so there's never a moment of weakness with that because people have just associated the fact that Char can handle this, she's handled everything else. And so it becomes this challenge with wanting to be this person, but also wanting people to see the human side of you, that although you are going through these things and although that you handle it what they would consider better than norm, sometimes that support is also needed. But then you also have to allow yourself to be vulnerable and to ask for the support when it's happening. And you're probably thinking, well, Shah, these are great steps. How realistic is it really? Well, we're still struggling with it. And that's not that they don't work. It's not that these steps are not going to work. I think that they do. I think for me, it's been very challenging with understanding the why. And I think that has been the biggest issue, and probably for a lot of us, is trying to understand the why, that we fixate on it so much. Why is this happening? Why is life taking this course? And it's important, I suppose, understanding the why. But the biggest thing that I have learned from all of this is, I think, just changing the way that you see it. And this can be done in such a small manner with just telling yourself that, why not? And I know you're like me immediately. I'm like to myself, I don't want to go through all of these struggles, and I agree with you. I don't either. But it becomes easier to navigate and to tackle when you ask yourself, okay, well, this is happening. It's not fun. Don't want it to happen. But how do I get over it then? Why? I remember somebody once saying that, like, if you're going through hell, why do you want to stay there? And it's again, it's one of those things that are so much easier said than done, and I agree with you. But there are also times where we have to put in the work. We have to acknowledge that this is things that happen. It's life. It's going to happen. And it's then this thing where we tell ourselves, well, if life is happening and there's nothing that we can do about it, and of course there are certain things that are in our control, how can I change the way that I see it? And that's just it. Following those steps. You know, it's one of those things that you can't really escape, but it doesn't have to be this enabling thing. It doesn't have to be this disabling thing that each and every single time a setback happens in our lives, we go back to, you know, reinforcing all of those feelings, validating all of the bad emotions that are happening in our lives. And I think this probably ties in with all the previous episodes. The reason for unfailing ourselves is that we've become so accustomed to certain thinking, certain thought patterns, and the way that we do certain things that we forget that we're not old dogs who can't learn new tricks. You know, this is one of those things where we have the capability and the ability to change the way that we see things. It's not always going to be the easiest, but I know for a fact that it's definitely one of those things that make it rewarding and worthwhile in the end. And so I know I've rambled a lot and said a lot, and I think before I close our episode for today, I've just had a bit of a moment with myself right now that in life we have this fixation with wanting things to happen the way that we want them to happen, when we want them to happen, how we want them to happen. And I think we would be so ungrateful if life did happen that way. I know for a fact that sometimes things happen in our life for us to appreciate things that are happening in our lives and to be grateful for the way that it is happening. I am like, we are 8 months into this channel, 7-8 months into the channel, and I can't explain how much I've grown in my mental capacity, and it becomes so rewarding because the entire purpose of this channel was learning to unfail ourselves. And when you do this reflection, you see that it's these baby steps, it's these little victories that happen, and it's not something that happens overnight. And sometimes when you're going through it, you don't think that there's any change, and then you look back 8 months, 2 weeks, 2 days, a few, however long, and you realize just how far you've come. And I think that's important for us to remember, to take a breather, to relax, and to tell yourself that I'm not the same person that I was 2 weeks ago, a month ago, 5 months ago, a year ago. And it's these little strides that we do that make life worthwhile. And so yeah, that's all for today's episode. Let me not get too emotional and in my feels. If you made it this far, again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, here's to learning, relearning, and unveiling yourself. Bye.